With all the hype surrounding Code Veronica's upcoming big budget remake, I almost feel a little bad coming to piss on everyone's parade like this. People are excited to see Claire Redfield back in action again, excited to return to Rockfort Island, and I really wish I could share that sentiment. But I can't, because fundamentally, does Code Veronica actually need a remake? Absolutely not. Sorry if you expected more of a build-up there. To answer why, I think we should look at the most commonly cited reasons as to why remakes are deemed to be necessary, and I think there's three big ones that typically get tossed around. The first is the matter of preservation, and it's a valid concern, but Code Veronica is already very well preserved. I'd be a liar to claim that the Dreamcast original is easily accessible, but the game was ported to the biggest selling console of all time with enhanced features and extra cutscenes, and that version was then used as the model for ports to modern systems. Let's face it, Capcom are doing a hell of a lot better than a lot of their contemporaries, and what they're doing is arguably the bare minimum. I played Code Veronica for the first time on a PS4, so the game isn't some archaic relic lost to time, you could boot that shit up as we speak. The second reason tends to be a desire to update certain outdated elements, and this is where comes the customary discussion on where to apply the knife and how much needs cutting away. But this has always seemed a little bit silly to me. Everything, including the upcoming Code Veronica remake, is destined to become outdated eventually. What I tend to find in these sorts of discussions is that what's considered outdated is just an older design choice that the commentator doesn't like so much. Imagine applying the same logic to other media. Imagine the fucking reviews. Yes, Halloween is a masterclass in encroaching dread, exemplifying the true elemental horror of the unknown, that feeling of helplessness against an unstoppable, superhuman force of nature. But damn, like that shit is so outdated because we just don't make movies like that anymore. Why don't we talk about games the same way we can talk about other kinds of media? So what exactly is outdated? Well, we can always look at the graphics, I suppose. That's an easy enough target. Because, yeah, of course a remake with all the resources and finance at Capcom's disposal is going to look more graphically detailed and impressive than a game over 20 years its senior. That's pretty much unavoidable. But the smooth minimalism, bright colours, and graphical ambition of the original has its own unique charm, you know? A feeling that can't be accurately replicated by just transplanting the art design onto a more modern looking game. But yeah, that's all pretty subjective, a matter of preference. I think what I take more issue with is the idea that Code Veronica, and let's face it, a lot of early survival horror titles have outdated mechanics. You guessed it, fixed camera angles and tank controls. For the sake of clarity, Code Veronica didn't actually have fixed camera angles in the traditional sense. There was a 3D camera, just one that wasn't able to be controlled by the player, in stark contrast to the pre-rendered backgrounds of Resi's 1 through 3. But these angles were still curated to a similar degree as those previous games, allowing the developers to create bespoke shots and angles that enhanced the game's atmosphere tremendously. Think about ascending the range-wrenched steps to the Ashfield Manor, climbing the staircase with the grotesque wooden doll slowly emerging into view, treading dark hallways with no idea of exactly what could be lurking around each corner. The atmosphere and tension established through these camera choices is palpable, and not something I think we should be so willing to trade off for the sake of the same homogenized viewpoint. The camera has been safely nestled between Leon Kennedy's arse cheeks since 2017, and we haven't been able to recover it since. And as for tank controls, well yeah, there's a bit of a learning curve, as with pretty much any new mechanic in a video game. I think anyone who claims that they're designed in such a way to be intentionally awkward and stilted is, for lack of a more technical term, coping, but tank controls are the best way to experience survival horror titles with these fixed angles. Thing is, a lot of these older survival horror titles did have the option to switch to analog control. You could switch out the tank controls and play with a control scheme that was more akin to other styles of game. It becomes apparent very quickly that the games weren't designed for this though. You mostly end up just slipping and sliding around the map like you're driving around in first gear in Need for Speed Most Wanted. For those of you who are blissfully unaware, that is a fucking miserable experience. The games were clearly designed with tank controls in mind. They're the best way to experience these old survival horror titles, and I feel like you're really missing out on a core part of the experience if you choose not to use them. So, why remake a game? Why remake Code Veronica? If not to update or preserve it, two concerns I've hopefully proven unnecessary, why commit so many resources and time to re-envisioning Code Veronica? What I most often hear is that a remake could bring out Code Veronica's untapped potential, to improve the foundations it's built on and transform it into the game it always could have been. And these arguments, largely, I think are made in good faith. I can see their reasoning because, yes, I love Code Veronica, but it also fucking sucks. The backtracking is atrocious, the pacing is awful because you gotta do everything again with Chris, it's incredibly easy to softlock your entire playthrough without enough ammo or resources to take him down, and I think most of all, it is categorically lame as shit that Claire ultimately gets sidelined by her brother Chris in her own game. And it's when I start listing out my and many other people's valid complaints with the game's design and story, I begin to understand where some people are coming from. Code Veronica is also a tonal nightmare, swinging from dark gothic architecture and creeping dread to the antics of Steve Burnside.
Oh yeah, that felt good! Don't worry, Claire. Your knight in shining armor is here.
But that kind of rocks, honestly. Code Veronica's cutscenes are iconic, and I say that without a shred of irony.
Please try and keep me amused, and do not disappoint me by dying too soon. I so want to enjoy this.
I've got to be honest with you, if you don't like the dolphin laugh, I'm sorry, you're just beyond saving. This video, of course, is purely speculative. I have no idea what will be altered or changed. Maybe as a form of enduring respect to the original game's design, a lot of these elements may go unchanged, and the game would just update aspects like graphics and control. But respecting the original, to me, would just be leaving it alone, preserving it for future generations to play, assess, and enjoy. Instead, the perceived failings of Code Veronica could be used to inform the series' development going forward, looking into the future instead of beating our boat ceaselessly into the past. Changing aspects of a game's design, major or minor, changes the overall experience. So we're not preserving Code Veronica at all, we're diluting its overall legacy by intrinsically altering what Code Veronica actually is. And this isn't even an alternative Code Veronica either, we already have that in the form of Code Veronica X. Look, it might seem silly when pricks like me started getting all anal about minor details and changes like this, but I think it's important to remember that those details make up a significant part of the experience. Think about the Silent Hill 2 remake. Gone are the atmospheric, fixed camera angles employed to occasionally throw the player off balance, the framing and lighting of cutscenes to give them this ethereal, unnerving, otherworldly edge. Even gone is the opening 2-minute stare into the haze of Toluca Lake. We can replicate assets, graft an older game's plot and characters into a new game, but the inability to preserve that atmosphere means that the game ends up becoming a fundamentally different experience, and often not for the better. Like, Christ, the remake doesn't even have James say,
"This town is full of monsters. How can you sit there and eat pizza?"
and you're gonna sit here and tell me that it's a 10 out of 10? Get out of here. The magic of the original is in the unique style and atmosphere it was able to create with the resources and hardware available to them at the time. Or perhaps didn't necessarily intend to create,
Father!
but the one that was created regardless. Code Veronica is not a flawless game, no question, and I think that people's optimism in hoping that the remake will improve the game's ludicrous backtracking and potential softlocks is well-founded and understandable. But I hope that I've been able to illustrate that the trade-off for these improvements is that the core of the game's experience will be irreparably altered. Perfection or flawlessness should never be any game's goal. To love something is to love it in spite of imperfection and flaws, and the idea that a Code Veronica remake will be devoid of them seems, again, a little silly to me. Odds are this remake will have the same issue as all of Capcom's other Resi remakes, namely cut content and slower pacing to make way for more cinematically minded gameplay. RIP scenario swapping. Code Veronica is an artifact of a time when the new generation of hardware charged imaginations, made the world wonder just what could be accomplished at the turn of the new millennium. It's an over-the-top, supremely silly, gothic survival horror throwing everything at the wall with almost reckless abandon. It's grandiose, confident, horrifying, tragic, and absolutely fucking ridiculous in the same breath. As I say, it is far, far from perfect, but there isn't really another game in this series quite like Code Veronica. For better and for worse, its downright deranged blend of styles could have only been accomplished with a game looking to the future, one that wanted to innovate and reinvent just what was possible within this series. And this is why I struggle to see the value in retreading the lonely halls of Rockford Prison. The 9th generation of consoles should have seen us stepping boldly into a new future, exploring the possibilities of just what was possible, instead of where we are, eternally mired in the legacy of the past. Also, before I go real quick, I found this really cool teaser for Code Veronica when it was released in Japan. I couldn't work it organically into the video in any way, so here it is. Enjoy.
Code Veronica. Capcom.